I didn't know my life was about to split cleanly in two that night. Not before I put on that black dress. Not before I followed my husband into a ballroom glowing with crystal chandeliers and expensive smiles. And definitely not before another woman slid a $1 bill across the table, like I was something she'd just tipped. I'm 46 years old. I own a custom metal workshop in Tennessee called Peterson Fabrication. I build high-end barbecue smokers, precision steel, handcrafted, the kind serious pitmasters wait years to own. My hands are permanently rough. My nails never quite lose the grease. And I paid off my mortgage 3 years early. For 23 years, I was married to Michael Peterson. We built a life together, 4 children, a house, a business that grew from a one-car garage into something real. And yet, standing in that hotel ballroom, I realized how small my husband had quietly learned to make me. Michael had stopped inviting me to his corporate events years ago, said I didn't fit the culture, said my humor was too blunt, my world too blue-collar. I believed him, or maybe I chose to. But 3 weeks ago, he walked into my workshop and told me I had to attend his company's holiday party. Not because he wanted me there, because I had to be. That wasn't an invitation. That was a warning. The Riverside Grand Hotel looked like it employed people whose only job was opening doors for people who never touched them. Marble floors, crystal lights worth more than my first truck. Michael wore his polished executive smile. I wore my funeral suit. And then she appeared. Lauren Hayes. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. The confidence of a woman who had never assembled furniture at 2 a.m. and never worried about grease stains. Her eyes lit up when she saw my husband, bright, intimate, familiar. They shared inside jokes, whispered, laughed. I sat there like background noise. And then Lauren turned to me, smiled slowly, reached into her clutch, and flicked a $1 bill across the table. It slid to a stop beside my drink. She leaned back, her arm brushing Michael's, and said sweetly, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him tonight." The table exploded with laughter. My husband laughed too. That was the moment something inside me went completely, permanently quiet. I picked up the $1 bill, folded it neatly, and looked her straight in the eyes. "Thanks," I said calmly. "That'll cover the down payment on your mistakes." The laughter died, and my marriage ended. Right there, under crystal chandeliers. Before that night at the Riverside Grand, my life looked ordinary in the way people praise without ever truly seeing. I was 46, but my body felt older in places that mattered. My shoulders, my hands, my lower back. Years of welding steel had carved their mark into me. Peterson Fabrication wasn't just my business, it was proof. Proof that I could build something solid, something that lasted, something that didn't lie. 1,500 square feet of controlled chaos. Welders humming. Half-finished smokers lined up like quiet promises. I loved that shop more than I loved most people. Steel never pretended to be something it wasn't. Michael and I met when we were young and broke and optimistic enough to confuse ambition with love. He was charming in a clean, polished way, corporate-minded even back then, always talking about strategy, positioning, growth. I was the opposite, hands-on, direct, allergic to buzzwords. Somehow, it worked, at least at first. We married fast, built a house before we could afford it, had kids before we felt ready. Ethan came first, then the twins, Ryan and Sophie, and finally Emma, my shadow, the one who still believed I could fix anything with enough time and effort. Michael climbed the corporate ladder, marketing, branding, campaigns that ran late into the night. I built smokers in a one-car garage while he practiced presentations in the living room. For the first 5 years of our marriage, I went to his work events. I shook hands with people who smiled without warmth, people who asked what I really did, like welding precision steel was a cute hobby between real jobs. I laughed it off, made jokes, took pride in being different. But difference has a shelf life. Around year 5, Michael stopped inviting me. At first, it was subtle. "Oh, this one's just internal. It'll be boring for you. You wouldn't like the crowd." Then it became honest. "You don't really fit the culture," he said one night, not unkindly. "Your humor is rough. These people matter." So I stayed home. I coached Little League, fixed broken appliances, expanded my business, paid off the mortgage early, told myself couples didn't need to live inside each other's worlds to be solid. I ignored how his world slowly stopped making room for me. I ignored how his phone tilted away when he texted, how his laughter sounded different when it wasn't meant for me, how his coworkers' names stopped appearing in stories, replaced by vague they and people from work. And I definitely ignored how invisible I'd become, until the night he told me I had to come. And everything I'd convinced myself was normal finally stepped into the light. Infidelity rarely announces itself with screaming alarms. It seeps in quietly, dressed as convenience, professionalism, harmless distance. Michael didn't come home late every night. He came home selectively late. Certain days of the week, certain campaign pushes. His phone never rang after 10, but it vibrated often. Short bursts, always face down, always dismissed with a practiced flick of his thumb. "Work," he'd say. And I wanted to believe him, because belief was easier than admitting I was being edged out of my own marriage. Lauren Hayes entered our lives the way coworkers always do. First as a name, then as a voice in passing. Lauren's team nailed the rollout. Lauren handled the client dinner. Lauren's sharp. He never said she was beautiful. He didn't need to. I could hear it in the way his voice softened when he said her name. Still, I didn't confront him. I'm not the kind of woman who hunts shadows without proof. I've built my life on tangible things. Steel you can touch, welds that either hold or fail. But something shifted. Michael started correcting me in public. Small things, interrupting jokes, finishing my sentences with cleaner, safer versions. At first I thought it was nerves. Then I realized it was positioning. He wasn't embarrassed of me. He was managing me. His family noticed before I did. His mother asked once, casually, "Are you still helping with his image?" Image. Like I was an accessory he'd misplaced. Even our children felt the change. Ethan stopped asking where his dad was. He assumed. The twins joked about corporate dad. Emma started climbing into my bed more often at night, like she sensed something was wrong but didn't have words for it. And I stayed quiet because silence had become my survival skill. The party invitation shattered that silence. After 5 years of exclusion, suddenly I was required. Not wanted, required. Michael stood in my workshop, surrounded by half-built smokers and the smell of hot metal, and told me which suit to wear, which barber to use, what not to say. I remember wiping my hands on a rag and realizing something cold and precise. You don't micromanage someone you're proud of. You manage liabilities. That was when the doubt finally took shape. And by the time we walked into the Riverside Grand, it wasn't fear I felt. It was dread, because some part of me already knew. People don't suddenly bring their spouses back into public unless they're trying to control the narrative. The Riverside Grand smelled like expensive perfume and polished lies. Crystal chandeliers hung low enough to remind everyone who belonged beneath them. Men in tailored suits. Women in dresses that looked designed to intimidate rather than attract. Every laugh was just a little too loud. Every smile held a calculation behind it. Michael transformed the moment we stepped inside. His posture straightened. His voice dropped into that smooth corporate register I'd grown used to hearing only at home, never directed at me anymore. He moved through the room like he owned it, hand lightly guiding me forward. Not affectionate, just directional. "This is my wife," he said again and again. Not my name. My title. I shook hands, smiled, forgot names the moment they were spoken. Conversations skimmed past me like I was furniture, present, functional, unremarkable. Then I saw her. Lauren Hayes didn't rush. She didn't scan the room. She arrived, measured steps, controlled smile, eyes already locked on my husband. Michael saw her at the same time. His face changed. It was subtle, but I caught it. The softening around his eyes, the unconscious straightening of his jacket, the way his breath caught for half a second before he smiled. They didn't greet each other like coworkers. They greeted each other like people who had unfinished conversations. Inside jokes flowed immediately, references I didn't understand, shared laughter that didn't invite me in. I sat there sipping my drink, watching my husband lean toward another woman with a familiarity that didn't belong to me anymore. I might as well have been invisible. Lauren finally turned her attention to me after nearly 10 minutes. She looked me up and down, not rudely, just efficiently. "So you're the wife," she said, voice light. Before I could respond, she reached into her clutch. I heard the soft flick before I saw it. A single dollar bill slid across the table, spinning once before stopping beside my glass. Lauren leaned back, her arm brushing Michael's sleeve, close enough to claim space without touching skin. "Don't worry," she said with a sweet smile. "I'll take good care of him tonight." For half a second, the room froze. Then laughter exploded. Polite laughter, shocked laughter. The kind people use when they're not sure if they're allowed to be offended. Michael laughed too. Not nervously. Comfortably. That sound landed harder than the dollar. I stared at the bill, at the table, at my husband laughing beside another woman while she publicly claimed him. My chest didn't tighten, it emptied. I picked up the dollar bill, folded it carefully, neater than it deserved, and looked straight at Lauren. "Thank you," I said calmly. Nearby conversations stalled. "That'll cover the down payment on your mistakes." Silence slammed down like a door. Lauren's smile faltered. Michael's face drained of color. Someone gasped softly. Someone else muttered my name. I stood up, buttoned my jacket with steady hands, and walked away. Michael called after me. But by then, I was already gone. I don't remember the drive home. I remember my hands steady on the steering wheel, the red lights blurring, the radio playing something soft and meaningless. My body moved on instinct, while my mind replayed one moment on a loop. Michael laughing, not defending me, not stopping her, laughing. By the time I reached home, the house was dark and quiet, everyone asleep. The normalcy felt obscene. I didn't go inside. I walked straight to my workshop. At 3 a.m, welding steel is meditative in a brutal way. The heat forces focus. The noise drowns thought. Sparks fly and die instantly. Honest, uncomplicated. I soldered very diligently and tirelessly. My phone sat on the workbench, face up, silent. No apology, no explanation, no, "Are you okay?" Around midnight, I tried calling once. Voicemail. I told myself not to read into it. Told myself adults stayed out late sometimes. Told myself I wasn't about to unravel over one humiliating joke. But then, at 4:30 a.m., my phone vibrated. A bank notification. $387. Riverside Grand Hotel. Room charge. Timestamped. 1:47 a.m. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took screenshots and emailed them to myself because some instincts are born from experience. Dawn was breaking when Michael's white BMW pulled into the driveway. I watched through the workshop window as he fumbled with his keys, movements sloppy, confidence gone. When he stepped inside the house, I waited 10 minutes, let the quiet stretch. He was standing by the coffee maker when I walked in, still wearing yesterday's makeup. Still smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't his. And draped over his shoulders, a woman's blazer, not mine. Embroidered initials caught my eye. L.H. "Oh," he said, startled. "You're up early." I never went to sleep. He laughed softly, too quickly. "I told you I'd be late. The party ran long. A bunch of us went to another colleague's suite. I crashed on the couch." He gestured at the blazer. "Lauren lent me this. It got cold." Then I saw it, just above his collar. Dark, deliberate. A mark. "You've got something on your neck," I said quietly. His hand flew up. His face cycled through surprise, panic, calculation. "It's nothing," he said. "I must have burned myself with a curling iron." 23 years. I'd watched him get ready thousands of times. He'd never once burned himself with a curling iron. He turned away, started talking about dry cleaning, about weather, about nothing, humming like this was just another morning. Something inside me didn't shatter. It closed. That was the moment I decided the locks were changing. Today, Sunday morning arrived without mercy. I was awake before 6, not from anger, but from clarity. The kind that settles in after a long night of lies finally line up into something undeniable. I drove to Home Depot while the sky was still gray and bought commercial-grade deadbolts, 4 of them, one for every exterior door. Heavy, solid, unapologetic, just under $300. I installed them myself, 20 minutes per door. No rushing, no shaking hands. Every turn of the screwdriver felt deliberate, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for years. Around 9, Ethan wandered out in socked feet, hair still messy. "Mom," he said carefully, "why are you changing all the locks?" "Security upgrade," I replied without looking up, "making sure only the people who live here can get in." He hesitated. "Does Dad know?" "He's about to." Ethan didn't argue. He handed me tools, worked beside me on the last door. When we finished, I gave him a new key set and told him not to give one to his father. He nodded once, understood more than I wanted him to. Michael left for hot yoga around 10. At 6:30 that evening, I heard the BMW in the driveway. I sat in the living room with a beer, the house quiet in a way that felt watchful. Upstairs, Ethan's door was cracked. He was listening. We both were. "Why isn't this working?" Michael called, irritation creeping in. I waited. "Hey," he yelled, "the key isn't working." I opened the door after the third shout. He stood there in yoga pants, holding his keys like they'd betrayed him. "Neither is our marriage," I said calmly. His face went blank. "What?" "Go talk to Lauren," I continued. "The woman who thinks I'm worth $1. The one whose jacket you wore home. The one who left her signature on your neck." "That's not what happened," he snapped. "You're twisting everything." I didn't move as he tried to step past me. "This is my house, too." "It was," I replied, "before you turned it into a group project." Neighbors appeared like clockwork. Mrs. Chen watered dead plants. The Johnsons checked their mailbox for the 3rd time. No one pretended very hard. "You're being unreasonable," Michael hissed. "Communication ended when you added a 3rd person without consent," I said, loud enough for the audience. "That's not a marriage. That's a committee. And I'm resigning." He stormed back to his car. I waved at the neighbors and went inside. The next morning, the letter arrived. A law firm envelope. Thick. Cold. Michael wanted spousal support. Equitable division. Half my business. Half of the company he'd always called too blue collar. That's when I made my next call. Not to him. To my lawyer. And that was when I learned something worse than betrayal. Everyone had known, just not me. The house felt too big once Michael was gone. Not empty, just hollow in places I didn't know how to fill yet. Night was the hardest. The children slept. The walls creaked. Every sound felt amplified, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the past 23 years like a slow, cruel audit. Every time I'd stayed quiet, every joke I'd swallowed, every moment I'd told myself love meant endurance. Had I made it easy for him to replace me? That question cut deeper than his betrayal. The lawyer's words echoed in my head. This is going to get ugly. I walked through the workshop late one night, running my fingers along half-finished smokers. Steel I trusted. Work that never lied to me. I leaned against a workbench and finally let the weight settle. I cried there. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, shaking release, tears soaking into a shop rag, my shoulders tight with years of restraint finally letting go. I wasn't mourning Michael. I was mourning the version of myself I'd abandoned to keep the peace. The woman who used to laugh louder, who didn't soften her edges to be acceptable, who didn't apologize for taking up space. I thought about Emma, about the way she watched everything, about what she would learn from this if I stayed small now. That scared me more than losing my marriage. At my lowest point, the fear wasn't being alone. It was becoming invisible again. And somewhere between exhaustion and resolve, I realized something quietly powerful. This pain wasn't here to destroy me. It was here to strip away the version of me that no longer served. I wiped my face, stood up straight, and made myself a promise. If I was going to lose everything, I was at least going to lose it standing. That was the night I stopped reacting and started preparing. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived with paperwork. A thick folder slid across a polished conference table in my attorney's office. Receipts, statements, transfers highlighted in yellow like warning lights I'd ignored for too long. "Take your time," my lawyer said gently. I didn't need to. The story told itself. Hotel charges, too frequent, too specific. Always weekends, always late night. Luxury dinners labeled as client entertainment. Spa charges that had nothing to do with business. Transfers, small enough not to trigger alarms, consistent enough to be deliberate. Money I had earned with burned hands and long nights had been quietly redirected into a life I wasn't invited to. "This isn't just infidelity," my lawyer said. "This is financial misconduct." The words should have enraged me. Instead, they grounded me. Because anger is chaotic, but clarity is sharp. Then came the final piece. A transfer to an unfamiliar account. Repeated. Regular. Purposefully spaced. A company name surfaced. I recognized it immediately. Lauren Hayes wasn't just a woman my husband had humiliated me for. She worked for a subsidiary of my own company. She was on payroll, paid, indirectly, by me. The room went quiet as the implications settled. My lawyer leaned back slowly. "She knew," he said. "Or she should have." And suddenly, everything aligned. The confidence, the entitlement, the dollar bill. She hadn't seen me as a wife. She'd seen me as invisible infrastructure. It didn't harden me. It freed me. I wasn't dealing with a love triangle. I was dealing with people who underestimated the woman whose name signed their checks. "I'm not going to scream," I said calmly. "I'm not going to threaten. I just want the truth documented." My lawyer nodded. "That's the strongest position you can take." For the first time in weeks, I slept that night. Not because the pain was gone, but because the fog had lifted. I woke up knowing exactly who I was and exactly what I was worth. The next move wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It unraveled. Quietly. Publicly. Irreversibly. Court day arrived, wrapped in winter light and stale air. I wore my best suit, not for intimidation, but for respect, for myself. Michael sat across the aisle with his attorney, posture stiff, jaw set, eyes fixed anywhere but me. He looked smaller, not weaker, just exposed. His lawyer spoke first, confident and polished, painting a familiar story. A devoted husband, a misunderstood marriage, a wife who overreacted. Words like vindictive, controlling, emotionally distant floated through the room like smoke. I listened without interrupting. When it was my turn, I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't embellish. I answered only what I was asked. Then my attorney approached the bench. Receipts, statements, transfers. Each document landed with a quiet, devastating finality. The judge read, paused, read again. "Mr. Peterson," she said evenly, "can you explain why marital funds were used repeatedly for hotel stays and transferred to an employee connected personally to you?" Michael's attorney tried to interject. The judge raised a hand. "No," she said. "I'm asking him." Michael's mouth opened, closed, His silence said more than any explanation could have. The ruling came swiftly after that. The house, mine. The business, mine. Full ownership, full custody with structured visitation. Michael was ordered to repay the misused funds and cover legal costs. When the judge finished, she looked directly at me. "You showed restraint," she said, "and foresight. This court recognizes that." Michael didn't look at me as we left. Outside, the air felt different, lighter, like a storm had finally moved on. The fallout continued beyond the courtroom. Friends who had once laughed at Lauren's jokes stopped returning her calls. Colleagues distanced themselves from Michael with professional politeness that cut deeper than anger. His reputation, so carefully curated, collapsed under the weight of documented truth. I didn't celebrate. I went home. I made dinner, helped Emma with homework, sat in the quiet and let the world reset itself around me. That night, I realized something important. I hadn't won because I fought harder. I won because I stopped protecting people who were willing to destroy me. Life didn't magically become easy after the ruling. It became honest. Mornings were quieter. Coffee tasted stronger. The house felt different, not haunted, not broken, just recalibrated, like it had exhaled after holding its breath for years. I threw myself back into my work, not to escape, but to reclaim it. Peterson Fabrication expanded faster than I'd planned. Orders came in from people who didn't know my story, and from some who did. I stopped explaining myself. I let the steel speak. Ethan worked with me more often. The twins learned when to give me space. Emma started leaving little notes in my lunch bag, drawings of sparks and hearts, and words like, "You're strong." I didn't date. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I learned to sit in it. Some evenings, I'd stand in the workshop after everyone else left, watching smoke curl lazily from a test burn. I'd think about the woman I used to be, the one who shrank to make things easier for others. I didn't hate her. I thanked her. She survived long enough for me to become someone stronger. Michael faded into the background of my life the way noise eventually does when you stop paying attention to it. Lauren disappeared entirely. Not with drama, just irrelevance. And that, I learned, is the most complete ending of all. If there's a lesson in this story, it isn't about revenge. It's about recognition, about knowing when love turns into erasure, about understanding that loyalty to yourself is not cruelty, about realizing that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it calmly changes the locks and moves forward. I didn't lose my marriage that night under crystal chandeliers. I found myself. And this time, I'm not giving her up for anyone.